Hello and welcome to Label Sessions Presents, the podcast where we talk to the most interesting people about all the things you need to know in the world of innovation, business, design, tech, and culture. I'm Fuzlin Esau, all the way down in Cape Town, South Africa. And today we're joined by two brand new label mates, as well as Nick Sherrard and Josh Nixon from the Label Sessions team. A big welcome to Fiona Seath. Fiona has spent her career shaping product and brand strategies for some of the most established drink brands in the world, and then challenged herself to break out of that category, applying her thinking to fintech, fashion, and beyond. Also, a big welcome to Sam Nyakiamo. Sam is the founder of Counter Rock, a Gen Z media brand that's reimagining rugby coverage from the ground up. We'll kick off with our first topic, and non-alcoholic beer is now on track to become the second biggest beer category globally, overtaking ale in 2025. But as the category grows, brands are taking very different approaches, like the new Dad Strength IPA in the US that leans into traditional beer culture. Will the future of low and no alcohol drinks be about attracting new audiences or simply giving classic beer drinkers an alternative? Fiona, I think this one's perfect for you.
I've done actually quite a lot of research in this area, not specifically on beer, it's been across categories. And I think one misnomer that I need to debunk for a lot of people is that low and no alc produce is generally consumed by people who also consume full alcohol. So a lot of people think that it's about introducing people who don't drink. Almost 100% of the low and no alc that is consumed by people who also drink full alcohol. And then the next one is the majority of the occasions in which low and no alc is consumed, they are also drinking full strength alcohol on those occasions. So they're actually using the low or the no to elongate their drinking session, basically, or build moderation. I'm not saying there are no alcs. There's obviously driver occasions where there, Heineken Zeros all over it. But it's surprised that particular insight was really surprising to me, that people were drinking both on the same occasion. And candidly, I did it myself last week. I was at a party. So I had a couple of glasses of wine with everybody else while everybody was sort of getting themselves happy. And then after 2 glasses, I spent the next 3 hours drinking 0% beer because I knew I was going to drive home. So I was like, okay. So I had I enjoyed in the sociability of having an alcoholic drink with the people at the party, but then I moderated what I was doing for my own benefit. And I had a no alcohol beer afterwards. Some people do it the other way around. They start on 0 and then or low and then go on to full strength so that they just don't get as drunk as quickly. But those are two things that I think is really important to flag. And so I think the part of your question was that will it be a continual sliding scale whereby low and no alcohol overtake full strength? And will it continue to grow? Yes. Will it plateau? Yes, most definitely. I can't imagine a world where there's no full strength anymore. It may become less important. It's definitely going to become less important. But I think it's about looking at how people are using the alternatives and the benefits they're getting from them, rather than them saying, do you know what, I just prefer this overall. Generally, there is sacrifice being made. 9 times out of 10, it's flavour. There are very few low or no alc products out there that match genuinely the quality of the flavour profile of the full strength. Some really close, but none 100%, not really. So there is a sacrifice. In the same way, the people who started drinking Diet Coke acknowledged, okay, I know there's a flavour difference, but I want the benefit of it having no sugar. So I'm choosing to make that sacrifice. It's a similar situation, I find. But it's fascinating. It is fascinating.
Yeah. It's fascinating, Fiona, as well, because that insight you've got around the way in which low alcohol works alongside full alcohol. You see what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of people working in beer and alcohol marketing who don't understand that. I think there's a lot of conversation to have where people don't. It's an really interesting thing, I guess, in terms of maybe it's partly the way categories work in people's strategies. It's almost like they have this hope where they've got a problem in one area, so they think this new thing that necessarily is like a area to a new audience. It's an interesting kind of sort of whole topic around that, I think.
There is, and I think one thing it's very easy to talk about low and no alc in isolation. And one of the big challenges that liquor's had overall is bringing young people in, which is shock horror to a Gen X like me, who were like, what? Nobody wants to drink alcohol anymore, what? But what you, and people don't like to talk about it, it's a taboo topic, but the biggest enemy to alcohol is drugs. So a lot of the younger generations that are not coming in, they're not coming in because they're taking another drug. I mean, at the end of the day, alcohol is a drug, and they're not coming in because they've found a drug that works better for them. So you can't ignore that that's there. It's there, and it's becoming more legal as time goes by. So that will always be the biggest competitor. And then the other, from the younger generation point of view, the other competitor to alcohol is Instagram. People want to look good. They don't want to look drunk. And so they're moderating what they take. And that is a fact. So a lot of the younger generation don't get into alcohol the same way certainly my generation did. I think I'm from the heaviest drinking generation, if the stats are correct, but still there. But yeah, I think people have to broaden their horizons when they're looking at, okay, where are we losing our volume to? It's not, the answer is not creating a non-alcoholic version of what we do. It's maybe that actually, do you know what? Whatever drug they may be taking, for whatever reason, is just working better for them. It's giving them a high that they prefer than the alcohol sludge the next morning. They're not getting a hangover, perhaps. Who knows? Lots of reasons. But I don't think if you're in the alcohol industry, you need to look beyond alcohol to find your solutions.
Is there something to be said too about, in terms of like non-alcoholic options often cost the same as the real thing, and also for people like myself, where like a big off-put for going out to the pub is like, it's gotten more and more expensive and that sort of thing too. Because obviously, yes, people are moving to other drugs because it might be cheaper, it might be better, it might have less. Who knows? I'm not really a drug user, as you can tell. But as far as like. As far as like the alcohol thing goes, is there something for Gen Z people like myself that you think where it comes down to the expense too?
I'll be honest, I've not heard that. I think so. First of all, yes, you're right. A lot of these products are actually, for wine, it's generally more expensive because when you reduce the alcohol in wine, you've actually got to make it full strength first, and then you add a process to reduce it. So for a lot of the products, it's an additional process, which is why the COGS are still, if they're not the same, they're more. So you're right on that front. So that's not necessarily a win. With regards to young people not being in the category, I don't know that is a thing. It might be, but what you tend to find is younger people are staying at home longer. Therefore, actually, they've got a bit more disposable income. Now, where they're spending that money might be different. So there is a bit of a luxury trend where people want to have, the Gucci belt. They might still be wearing a high street t-shirt, but they'll have the Gucci belt, and that'll make them feel good about themselves. So yes, maybe they're spending it in different places. But I'm not sure I can't afford to drink. Drinking's a bit, it's one. Do you know what? Alcohol's like lipstick. If you go into recession, it still grows because it's one of those things that people still turn to, even when it's all they can afford. It's their way of almost comforting themselves. I'm not saying that's right, but it does happen. So I'm not sure that it's cost that's the driver. Cost, incidentally, for people who do drink regularly, cost has been a way in which people have moderated for sure. So maybe they're drinking 3 nights a week instead of 4 or 5. That has definitely come through in the last few years with wine costs going up, things like that. But I've seen that less about young people coming in.
I certainly can't afford a Gucci belt, unfortunately. Maybe if I save up.
Stop drinking then, Josh.
Yeah, I do think there's something about sort of sober culture that has, or sober curious culture that has kind of become very on trend for Gen Z, and sort of looking at different ways to socialize. We've just kicked off, which I think is a global trend, the sort of early morning coffee clubs where people are going to sort of jam out before work and have some coffee. So I think there's definitely that switch in terms of how you're engaging socially. So it's no longer just over a drink. It really is over, a coffee in a less traditional way. And also I think a lot of people are on anti-anxiety meds. And I don't think those two don't mix. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's actually, I'm sure, so remember I'm isolated down here in Australia, but there's a lot of daytime clubs now. So, they open, that you see a queue outside somewhere at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, and it's people queuing to get into the daytime club. And I have not been to a daytime club, but I'm going to assume that the alcohol consumption is not what it would be at a nighttime club. So yeah, I agree with you. I think there is definitely that. And again, what I get scared to comment on, because I am in Australia and and I live in Sydney as well, so it's a bit cliche, but I mean, everybody's up at 5 a.m. here. The 5:30 run club's a real thing here. The yoga at 5:30 is a real thing here. So there's a lot of young people who they really are health first. Absolutely. And I was flippant about the Instagram generation, but their focus is hugely on what they look like. So rightly or wrongly, that of course is going to impact on what they consume, whether it's alcohol or food or anything. So yeah, I definitely think there's that generation. But again, if you're an alcohol producer, you've got to look at that, not think that a 0% version is going to be the answer, because it may not be. Maybe you need to get into the protein smoothies if you really want to share of the spend. Then maybe that's what you need to be doing. I know that's a bit extreme, but I think you get the point.
It's interesting as well, Sam, for your world, because one of the things that's definitely changed, I guess, in terms of presentations of sports players, rugby in particular, used to be that every rugby player, especially male rugby player, would tell you about drinking antics in different parts of the world. Now, if you go on most of their Instagram feeds, players now, when I tell you about their favorite sauna and whichever kind of unusual supplement they've got, it's a real switch just happened in the culture.
Most definitely, yes. Even, I guess, with players that we do work with now, and saying that, I don't think it's that they don't drink anymore. It's just how they want to be perceived by the public, whether that's for commercial purposes or some of them look at each other as, I guess, role models for young kids. But then again, still, I would say the old guard or Gen Z who were influenced by the old guard, who every weekend you will see them stories of them at the pub. Or sometimes it bleeds even into the pitch. I remember earlier this season there was a match, forgotten the player's name, a Bath rugby player, and I remember just looking at the schedule, planning our stuff, and I saw one of his Instagram stories that he was out, and I was thinking, you have a game tomorrow. Then again, he played, but then like right after the game, I think the camera was on him and he puked on the field, and I was like, that makes sense.
No, it's still there.
I guess nowadays, definitely drinking culture is still big in rugby, but I guess it's hidden a bit more just because of, I guess, Instagram. And as you said, people want to show how they look and want to be perceived a certain way.
Yeah. Well, also in Australia, NRL, so rugby league, is the bigger sport. And those guys don't care. They do not care one iota. And it's like 1980s soccer or football in the UK. They just don't care.